Welcome back. I'm your host at Navy Legends, and I want to begin this one with a number that defines the entire strategic logic of what you are about to hear. 12%. 12% of global trade by volume transits the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait every single year. 12% of global oil. 12% of global liquefied natural gas. 12% of the container ships that carry the manufactured goods, the raw materials, the food commodities that move between Asia, Europe, and East Africa. The Bab-el-Mandeb is 29 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, a geographic choke point so constricted that a single burning supertanker, drifting without power across the navigable channel, could functionally close one of the most economically critical maritime corridors on the planet for days, possibly weeks. The insurance markets know this. The shipping companies know this. Every naval commander who has sailed these waters knows this, and on the morning of February 11th, 2027, the Houthi Maritime Warfare Committee demonstrated that they know it too. The date is February 11th, 2027. The time is 4:03 local. The Bab-el-Mandeb Strait, approximately 18 nautical miles northeast of the Yemeni port of Mocha, in the narrowest navigable section of the strait's inbound shipping lane. The MT Stellar Horizon, a 300,000-ton, very large crude carrier, fully loaded with 2.1 million barrels of Saudi crude oil bound for Rotterdam, is making 12 knots on a northbound transit, escorted by the USS The Sullivans, DDG-68, an Arleigh Burke-class Flight 2, a guided missile destroyer assigned to Combined Task Force 153. The Sullivans is 1.4 nautical miles to the Stellar Horizon's port beam, running parallel at matching speed. Her AN/SQS-53C bow, sonar active, and her SPY-1DV, radar painting the surrounding water and airspace. The Stellar Horizon is not a military vessel. She has no defensive weapons. She has a crew of 23 Filipino and Indian merchant mariners. She has a hull loaded with 2.1 million barrels of crude oil that, if ignited by a precision strike at the waterline, would produce a fire of sufficient intensity and duration to make the tanker unsteerable. To kill her crew, and, critically, to block the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait for an estimated 14 to 21 days while the wreck was brought under control and cleared from the channel. The Houthi Maritime Warfare Committee's operational planning for the February 11th engagement had been running for 6 weeks. Not the targeting of the Sullivans, the targeting of the Stellar Horizon. Because the Sullivans can defend herself, because sinking or damaging a U.S. Navy destroyer, while tactically satisfying, does not close the Bab-el-Mandeb. Because a burning 300,000-ton supertanker drifting across the inbound lane of the world's fourth most critical maritime choke point does exactly what 6 months of drone and missile attacks on military shipping have failed to accomplish. It makes the strait functionally impassable and forces every shipping company and insurer in the world to reassess the risk premium on a Red Sea transit. The weapon chosen for the operation is the Bahr-1, Arabic for sea, a Houthi-designed, IRGC-advised autonomous surface vessel, an unmanned surface vehicle, constructed from a 7.4-meter fiberglass speedboat hull, fitted with a 180-kilogram shaped charge warhead in the bow section, a commercial marine autopilot system modified with a passive infrared terminal seeker, a 150-horsepower outboard motor capable of driving the vehicle to 38 knots, and a radar-absorbing hull coating that reduces the vehicle's radar cross-section to approximately 0.06 square meters at broadside aspect. The Bahr-1 is not a sophisticated system by the standards of the weapons discussed in the naval analysis community. It costs approximately $8,000 to produce. It requires no operator once its terminal seeker locks the thermal signature of a ship's hull. It is, in the terminology of military analysis, a fire-and-forget weapon. The Houthi Maritime Warfare Committee deployed 16 Bahr-1 vehicles from 2 fishing dhows operating in the southern Bab-el-Mandeb on the night of February 10th. The vehicles were deployed in pairs over a 4-hour window, motoring at low speed to pre-programmed holding positions in the shipping lane, where they were set to passive drift mode. Engines off, riding the current, presenting the minimal possible radar and thermal signature, until a coded activation signal was transmitted from a control station ashore. The holding positions had been selected to place the vehicles directly in the path of the Stellar Horizon's transit track, based on AIS position data that the vessel had been broadcasting in compliance with international maritime regulations. The shipping industry's AIS system, the automatic identification system that broadcasts every commercial vessel's position, heading, speed, and identity to anyone with a receiver, had been providing the Houthi targeting staff with real-time position data on the Stellar Horizon since she entered the Red Sea 47 hours prior. The vessel's transit schedule, her speed over ground, her course corrections, and her expected time of arrival at the Bab-el-Mandeb had been computed and provided to the Bahr-1 deployment team with sufficient precision to position the waiting vehicles within the tanker's projected track corridor. At 4:03:14, the activation signal reaches the 16 Bahr-1 vehicles via a commercial underwater acoustic modem system, identical to the one used in the Thalab-1 harbor attack on the USS Mason 5 months earlier. The vehicles power up simultaneously. Their passive infrared terminal seekers activate. Each vehicle has 2 potential targets within seeker acquisition range: the Stellar Horizon, at a range of 1.1 to 2.3 nautical miles, depending on the vehicle's holding position, and the USS The Sullivans, at ranges between 1.8 and 3.4 nautical miles. The seeker discrimination algorithm, pre-programmed to prefer the larger thermal signature, selects the tanker in every case. The Stellar Horizon's main engine thermal plume, the exhaust heat from a 35,000 horsepower 2-stroke diesel driving a 10-meter propeller shaft, is the brightest thermal source in the strait. Every Bahr-1 seeker locks it within 4.1 seconds of activation. 16 autonomous surface vehicles, 16 locked seekers, all pointed at the same ship. Engines to full power. Attack. At 4:03:22, the Sullivans' AN/SPS-67 surface search radar registers the first contacts. Not 16 contacts simultaneously. The vehicles were positioned at varying distances from the ship, and the radar's detection of a 0.06 square meter target in a sea state that is generating surface clutter returns requires contact to be within approximately 4.8 nautical miles for reliable detection. The first 4 contacts appear at 4:03:22 at ranges between 3.1 and 4.7 nautical miles, all bearing between 162 and 188 degrees, all accelerating rapidly. 8 more contacts appear over the following 40 seconds as the more distant vehicles move out of the radar clutter threshold. 4 contacts remain undetected. They are positioned in a radar shadow created by the Stellar Horizon's own hull, approaching from directly ahead of the tanker on a bearing where the massive steel hull of the VLCC is masking the contacts from the Sullivans' radar. The Sullivans' TAO has the picture, incomplete but unmistakably hostile, within 90 seconds of first detection. Captain, TAO. Multiple surface contacts, all bearing south to southeast, all closing on Stellar Horizon. Count at least 12, possibly more. No AIS. High speed. Assess USV attack. Intent hostile. The commanding officer of the Sullivans authorizes weapons free on all contacts without hesitation, and immediately transmits the attack warning to the Stellar Horizon on Channel 16 and to CTF 153 on the tactical circuit. His order to the Stellar Horizon is simple: maximum speed, hard starboard turn, get the ship's bow into the threat axis to minimize the impact surface area. The Stellar Horizon's officer of the watch, a veteran Filipino mariner with 22 years on tankers, acknowledges the warning and orders maximum engine power and hard starboard rudder. A 300,000-ton VLCC does not respond instantly to helm orders. Her turning circle at 12 knots has a diameter of approximately 1.8 kilometers. She will complete 90 degrees of turn in approximately 4 minutes. The Bahr-1 vehicles will arrive in less than 3. The Sullivans' 5-inch Mark 45 gun opens fire at 4:04:53, engaging the closest contact at 4.1 nautical miles with rapid fire. 20 rounds per minute, each 32-kilogram projectile flying for approximately 18 seconds before reaching the target area. The gun crew walks rounds across the threat bearing, trying to sweep the approaching swarm with volume fire. At 4:05:11, the first confirmed kill. A Bahr-1 vehicle takes a direct hit and explodes in a brief orange flash 3.7 nautical miles south-southeast of the Sullivans. Then a second at 4 hours, 5 minutes, 34 seconds. A third at 4 hours, 5 minutes, and 51 seconds. 3 kills. 13 vehicles remaining. Range, 2.6 to 3.9 nautical miles. Closing at 38 knots. The 2 Mk-38 25mm chain gun mounts, one forward, one aft, are now active. Their operators slewing the mounts to engage contacts as they enter effective range. The 25mm rounds are more effective against small surface targets at close range than the 5-inch gun, but their effective range is limited to approximately 2.5 kilometers. At 4:06:18, the forward Mk-38 begins engaging contacts at the edge of its envelope. 2 kills in 40 seconds. 1 vehicle destroyed cleanly, 1 disabled, its outboard motor shot away, drifting without propulsion but still carrying 180 kilograms of shaped charge on its bow. The disabled vehicle drifts north on the current. It remains an ordnance hazard, but is no longer a guided threat. 11 vehicles still functional. Still closing. Range, 1.8 to 3.1 nautical miles. The Sullivans' commanding officer makes the decision that the engagement has been building toward since the first radar contact. He turns the destroyer into the threat axis. Hard port rudder, crossing the stellar horizon's bow at maximum speed, interposing the Sullivans between the approaching vehicles and the tanker. It is a decision that accepts significant risk to the destroyer and her crew of 281 in exchange for buying the tanker additional time and reducing the attack geometry. A Bahr-1 with a 180-kilogram shaped charge striking the Sullivans' hull is a serious tactical problem. A Bahr-1 with a 180-kilogram shaped charge striking the stellar horizon's hull amidships into a 2.1 million barrel cargo of crude oil is a strategic catastrophe. The Phalanx CIWS systems, one forward, one aft, activate in autonomous surface engagement mode at 04:06:44. The Phalanx was not designed for surface engagement as its primary mode. Its 20mm rounds are optimized against aerial targets. But against a 7.4-meter fiberglass hull at close range, a Phalanx burst is devastating. The forward CIWS engages the lead contact at 1,100 meters. 0.7-second burst, 52 rounds, direct impact. The Bahr-1 disintegrates. Then the next contact at 980 meters. Then a third at 870 meters. 2 Mk-38s and 2 CIWS systems firing simultaneously. The Sullivans is generating a wall of outgoing fire across the southern approach bearing. 4 more vehicles are destroyed in 70 seconds. 7 remain, spread across a 1.4 nautical mile arc. At 4:07:31, 3 Bahr-1 vehicles reach the Sullivans herself. The first is engaged by the aft CIWS at 640 meters and destroyed at 580 meters. The 20mm rounds detonate the shaped charge at close range, producing a blast wave that rattles the Sullivans' aft superstructure and shatters the rear bridge window. The second vehicle, approaching from the port quarter at 55 meters per second, is engaged by the aft Mk-38 chain gun. The 25mm rounds track the vehicle at 420 meters range. 2 rounds strike the hull section aft of the warhead. The vehicle's motor is destroyed. The bow, carrying the armed 180-kilogram warhead, continues forward under residual momentum and strikes the Sullivans' port quarter hull, plating at frame 198, 1.1 meters above the waterline, at approximately 8 knots. The shaped charge does not detonate. The impact fuse requires a minimum striking velocity of 12 knots to initiate. The vehicle arrived at the hull at 8 knots, below the fuse threshold. The warhead does not fire. The 180-kilogram steel housing dents the hull plating and drops into the water. The hull is not breached. 2 sailors on the port weather deck, the after lookout station, are struck by spall from the impact. Fragments of fiberglass hull material and 1 section of the vehicle's motor housing. One sustains a deep laceration to his left forearm. The other is struck in the right shoulder by the motor housing fragment and sustains a fracture of the clavicle and 2 ribs. Both are ambulatory. The third vehicle targeting the Sullivans is destroyed by the forward CIWS at 310 meters. 4 vehicles remain. All 4 have maintained their infrared lock on the stellar horizon's thermal signature, despite the interposition of the Sullivans. The seeker algorithms have not been defeated. They track thermal signatures, not radar returns, and the tanker's 35,000 horsepower main engine is still producing the largest infrared source in the strait. 3 of the 4 vehicles are on approach bearings that take them around the Sullivans, targeting the tanker's port side amidships. 1 is on a bearing that brings it around the destroyer's bow, targeting the tanker's starboard bow section. The 5-inch gun engages. The forward Mk-38 engages. At 4:08:12, 1 vehicle is destroyed at 1,800 meters by a 5-inch round. Another is hit at 900 meters by the Mk-38. The hull is holed and the vehicle begins to sink, but it does not detonate before sinking. 2 vehicles remain, both targeting the stellar horizon, both now past the Sullivans' defensive screen, at 1,100 and 780 meters from the tanker's port side. The stellar horizon's officer of the watch has no weapons. He has completed approximately 40 degrees of his starboard turn, not enough to present the bow to the approaching vehicles, but enough to reduce the tanker's port side exposure. He has done everything a merchant mariner in an unarmed ship can do. The first Bahr-1, range 780 meters from the tanker, is engaged by the Sullivans' aft CIWS, now slewing hard to port to bring the approaching contacts back into its arc, after clearing the destroyer's own aft structure from the firing line. The CIWS fires at 740 meters range. The burst is 0.9 seconds, 67 rounds. The vehicle is struck at 680 meters. The shaped charge detonates under the fragmentation impact. The detonation occurs 680 meters from the stellar horizon's port side. The blast and fragmentation pattern at that range is insufficient to breach the tanker's hull plating. The overpressure wave is felt aboard the stellar horizon, felt as a sharp concussion through the hull, but produces no structural damage. 2 of the tanker's crew on the port bridge wing are knocked off their feet by the concussion. Neither is seriously injured. The second vehicle, the last one operational in the entire 16-vehicle swarm, is at 1,100 meters from the tanker when the aft CIWS slews to acquire it. The system takes 1.4 seconds to complete its slew and acquire the new contact. In those 1.4 seconds, the Bahr-1 closes 80 meters. The CIWS fires at 1,020 meters range. The burst is 0.6 seconds. 45 rounds. The vehicle is struck at 970 meters. The shaped charge detonates at 970 meters from the stellar horizon's port side. The fragmentation envelope at 970 meters reaches the tanker's hull with an energy level that is precisely at the boundary of what can cause structural damage to a VLCC's 21mm hull plating. 27 fragments reach the tanker's hull. 24 are deflected or produce only surface scoring. 3 penetrate the outer hull plating above the waterline. All 3 in the space between frames 204 and 212 above the main cargo manifold deck. The penetrations are small. The largest is 18 millimeters in diameter. None reach the cargo tanks. None produce flooding. No fire is ignited. 27 fragments. 3 penetrations. No fire. No flooding. No casualties among the tanker's crew of 23. The Stellar Horizon maintains her course and speed and clears the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait into the Red Sea at 5:14 local, slightly behind her original schedule. The engagement is over. It lasted 4 minutes and 41 seconds from first radar contact to the last Bahr-1 detonation. In those 4 minutes and 41 seconds, the Sullivans fired her 5-inch gun at maximum rate, both Mk-38 chain gun mounts, both Phalanx CIWS systems, and expended approximately 340 rounds of 5-inch ammunition, 1,800 rounds of 25mm ammunition, and 680 rounds of 20mm CIWS ammunition. 14 of 16 vehicles were destroyed by the Sullivans' weapons. 1 vehicle struck the Sullivans' hull without detonating. 1 vehicle was destroyed by the CIWS at 680 meters from the tanker. 1 vehicle detonated at 970 meters with fragment impact on the tanker's hull. Non-penetrating cargo, non-structural, non-incendiary. 2 sailors injured aboard the Sullivans. 0 casualties aboard the Stellar Horizon. The cost of 16 Bahr-1 vehicles is assessed at approximately $128,000 total. The cost of the ammunition expended by the Sullivans in the engagement is approximately $340,000. For the 3rd time in the Red Sea campaign, the cost-exchange ratio runs in favor of the adversary, not as dramatically as in some previous engagements, but in the right direction from the Houthi perspective. The strategic analysis, however, runs in a different direction. Because the Houthi Maritime Warfare Committee's objective was not to kill 16 vehicles. Their objective was to ignite 2.1 million barrels of crude oil in the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait. That objective was not achieved. The Stellar Horizon transited safely. The strait remained open. Lloyd's of London's war risk surcharge on Red Sea transits increased by a further 0.3 percentage points the following morning, adding approximately $180,000 to the insurance cost of a single tanker transit. But shipping companies did not suspend transits. The deterrent effect of the USS The Sullivans' presence held. The after-action report filed by the Sullivans' commanding officer identifies 3 tactical lessons. First, the 4 vehicles in the radar shadow of the Stellar Horizon's hull represent a doctrinal gap in escort positioning geometry that requires immediate revision. The escort ship should never be positioned in a way that allows the escorted vessel's own hull to mask inbound surface contacts. Second, the Phalanx CIWS in surface engagement mode, while effective at close range, consumes its magazine faster against surface targets than against aerial targets, and the engagement demonstrated that both CIWS systems came close to running out of ready ammunition before the last vehicles were neutralized. Third, the decision to interpose the destroyer between the swarm and the tanker was correct, but it temporarily removed the Sullivans' forward Mk-38 and forward CIWS from engagement arcs against vehicles approaching the tanker from the tanker's far side. A 2-ship escort, with 1 vessel on each beam, would have eliminated this geometry problem. Here at Navy Legends, what the February 11th engagement demonstrates is that the most difficult problem in protecting commercial shipping in a contested strait is not the capability of the defending warship. The Sullivans performed exceptionally. Her crew, her systems, and her commanding officer's decision to interpose the destroyer all worked as designed and trained. The difficult problem is the geometry of the task itself. 1 warship, 1 tanker, a 16-vehicle swarm approaching from an arc of 26 degrees in a strait that is 29 kilometers wide and through which the tanker must transit regardless of what is waiting in the dark water ahead. The Houthi Maritime Warfare Committee will file their own after-action assessment. They will note that 16 vehicles produced 3 hull penetrations on the target tanker. They will note that 1 vehicle struck the escort destroyer's hull. They will note the geometry gap in the escort's radar coverage that allowed 4 vehicles to approach undetected until late in the engagement. And they will note that the margin between a failed attack and the strategic objective they were trying to achieve, a burning supertanker blocking the Bab-el-Mandeb, was 970 meters, and the response time of a Phalanx CIWS that had 1.4 seconds to slew and acquire. The next swarm will have 32 vehicles. They will approach from a wider arc. Some will be set to target the escort ship rather than the tanker, forcing the defensive systems to split their fire. The Houthi Maritime Warfare Committee has been studying the same engagement data that the Sullivans' crew is now writing into their after-action report. They are drawing the same tactical conclusions, and they have more fishing dhows, more fiberglass hulls, and more 180-kilogram shaped charges than any escort task force in the Red Sea can run out of ammunition intercepting. The mathematics of protecting 12% of global trade in a 29-kilometer strait have never been comfortable. After February 11th, 2027, they are measurably less comfortable than they were the day before. Stay informed. Stay vigilant. I'll see you in the next one.